Good evening, everyone. Call the meeting to order. If anyone's recording, would they make it known? There are copies of the agenda. I would, however, like to take one item out of order. That would be the continued public hearing on the Form C for Ted and Margaret Stables, 0 Broad Street.
So I'm Ted Staples. I'm the owner of 0 Broad Street, and we are seeking approval of the definitive plan for Lot A5, which is this center lot. The access is over an existing right-of-way, and the utilities follow the same right-of-way. The last time we met, there was 4 questions that you guys wanted us to answer. Or 4 comments to address. And GAF has addressed those comments and provided you with updated plans and a cover letter. The comments were the reference sheet, which is the existing subdivision, was requested to remove Mr. Rowley's name, which they did. And then there was a question about easements, and they've clarified that all of the deeded properties have appropriate easement references within them. Then there was a suggestion about moving the road as far away from the vernal pool as possible, and they've updated the plans with some annotation. Basically, our intentions are to keep the road as far away from the vernal pool as possible. There'll be a trench for the sanitary and electric between the property line and the road. So our intention is to minimize that as much as possible, but keep the machinery and the soil within the right of way. So we're going to kind of field layout that as best we can and keep it as close or as far away from the vernal pool as possible. So that was the third comment. And then the 4th comment was related to the waivers, and I'm not entirely clear, but they've clarified that the waiver, that the current design now utilizes a single trench on one side of the roadway. So those were the 4 comments.
Are the waivers listed in the materials?
I've not seen those documents.
In the submittal, there was a request for what waivers were requested.
So the original submittal had all of the waivers included.
The first waiver is for waive placing them on the plan. So you have a waiver requested for listing the waivers on the plan. Waiver request for the street trees. Limits the clearing only for the road surface and drainage, stone drainage trenches. A waiver for storm drainage facilities, catch basins, manholes, etc. Waiver request to reduce the roadway service to 16 feet in width and limit the pavement to reclaimed asphalt. Waiver from clearing the entire width of the right-of-way to only that is required for a 16-foot roadway and drainage trenches. Waiver from the requirement of a bituminous pavement. Waiver for streetlights, waiver for replacement of street trees, requirement of trees. Waiver to construct sidewalks, waiver to install precast or granite curb, waiver from the requirement to install additional street monuments in the addition to the ones already shown on the plan, and a waiver from the requirement to install fire alarm circuits and fire alarm boxes, except as required by onset fire.
So that's essentially the same waivers as the 2009 approval.
Any other questions, comments? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public wish to address this issue?
Hi, Nancy McHale of Wareham Land Trust. Thank you very much for bringing this forward and being as sensitive as possible to the certified vernal pool. Now, before anything gets done with this, will it have to go through conservation in order to get their approval?
Yes.
Okay. And this subdivision is for a one dwelling unit, is that correct? That was my understanding?
I believe that was the understanding of the board. We haven't conditioned it.
One single residence, okay. So that then would all be in the final documentation?
The board can condition the number of lots on the subdivision road.
Right.
That would be terrific. Thank you.
That's part of the basis on which some of the waivers would be granted if the board chooses.
Thank you very much.
Any comments? Did you have a comment?
No longer one lot, one buildable lot, two, right?
For the subdivided, honestly. You looking for one dwelling unit or?
One dwelling, yeah.
Yeah.
In perpetuity. This is 75,000 square feet. You know, it sure can turn into a duplex real quick. I've seen that happen before.
Anything? Have you any comments, Shelley, or
No.
satisfied with the changes? Well, if there's nothing further, I'd look to close the public hearing.
Anything else to close the public hearing? Or Admiral Staples the third? Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Saw something.
Just type it out. If you can,
What's the board's pleasure on the... I guess the first request would be on the waivers.
Are you looking for, George.
Well, you want to approve with conditions or grant the waivers or as conditions? Or pick and choose which waivers you wish to grant and not? I think we discussed. They were not? Oh, oh, yeah, yeah. Do you have the original 2009 in that packet? Well, the request is, to waive road construction on the basis that this be a single family lot.
All we have to do is in the conditions is state that it has to be a single-family home in perpetuity, I believe, George.
I'm not sure on the perpetuity part, but I'm sure.
Well, I think if we state it on there, it has to go
Mhm.
that way. Perpetuity means forever.
So. Motion? Framework to. Date of that last plan. Dated 6/5/4/25 through.
Leave it? Oh, Charlie, I didn't mean for you to get up. I know you're an older person, older than me. I appreciate it, thank you.
So waivers granted on the basis, on the grounds that for single-family structure in perpetuity?
Yep.
We have our usual conditions, 2 years from date of filing with the town clerk. If work's not commenced, this decision would be, will expire. Stormwater maintenance plan be developed, final approval of site plan. Scratch that one. All rubbish, rebels, other debris removed from the property, disposed of off-site. Work hours, Sunday, no Sundays, legal holidays, and no work prior to 7 a.m. Site will not be clear-cut. Street lighting's been waived. Maybe apply, that won't be accepted. Public water supply. Approval and conditions of all other applicable town boards. and commissions and state agencies will be part of these conditions.
Mr. Chairman,
Mm-hmm.
did I hear you say that you weren't going to take a vote on the waivers?
Well, no, we were discussing the,
Oh, okay,
whether,
okay. All right. I thought I heard somebody say, well, they'd been voted on before, which was true, but since the subdivision
think-
expired, you got to approve them again, I think.
I think that was a question, whether there was any problem with it in the past, more than anything else. So I guess I would look for a vote to approve with the listed waivers and conditions.
Motion to approve with the listed waivers and conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
What are we saying? Will you just put the votes in there?
Yeah,
Or? I'm not used to seeing the right names on it.
I know. Let me get you to sign on this.
Everybody?
Yeah,
And
and initial.
you just put,
Form C.
bring my glasses in. Oh, we shouldn't end unless we can do them all, right? Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Back to the agenda. Meeting minutes for May 20th. Pretty brief. I don't know if you had a chance to review them. Am I allowed for this or no?
For May 20th, you're talking, Judge?
Yeah.
I got a problem right in the top. It says Mike Baptiste Jr. That's my son. Should be senior.
And the only thing I saw other than that was the motion to close the public hearing on Wareham Retail Management. That motion and vote is missing.
Could it be added in here?
Yeah, she should be able to put that in.
Entertain a motion to accept the minutes with the alteration of,
As corrected?
as corrected. That's fine. That's good. That's what I meant to say.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next item of business is an approval not required plan for John Grandmont, 74 Burgess Point Road. David?
All set? All right. Brian Wallace with JC Engineering. This plan is essentially a modification, I would say, of a plan approved back in 2011 for this property. Originally, this lot was subdivided into 3 separate lots, one with an existing dwelling. That was 2011. The owner is now just simply looking to change the interior lot lines between the 3 lots as well as the frontage. All 3 new lots, or newly created lots, meet zoning requirements. They meet the lot shape factor, being a 180-foot diameter circle. Essentially, this plan shows parcels of land being conveyed between each lot, and again, as I mentioned, the frontage meeting zoning requirements.
Just one small question, why?
Sure. You know, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the owner just wanted to modify the lots, and mainly I believe it was the lot with the existing dwelling. I believe he wanted to expand that frontage, I guess at the expense of the other 2 lots. But as I mentioned, every lot still meets zoning.
Charlie, I'm sorry, I am not familiar with the current condition of Burgess Point Road. Are you, please?
I can't say as I'm familiar with it either, having not been down there in quite some time. I know that the road exists, that it is drivable and goes out to additional property that's to the south and east of this, but I can't vouch for the condition of the road today.
You tell us?
Unfortunately, I'm not totally familiar myself with the condition of the road.
The way it exists, I'm gonna have a hard time supporting this, road. It's a driveway, yeah.
Say you're not creating new lots, you're just moving interior lot lines.
Yep.
3 lots exist today.
That's correct, yep.
That property was looked at a few years ago, back in, probably 20 years ago. The driveway on Burgess Point Road was a floating easement across the other properties. Forrest and I recused myself from purchasing that developable property. Deal fell through a little bit. That road, yeah, that road is easy going. They exist already.
I say you could have just waived the shape factor, which was probably done back when the 3 lots were created.
Yep.
portion of the road?
Well, it would if somebody proposed to.
At this time, what they're looking for, Manuel, we're not looking to look at the roads or access, anything like that. The lots are already there. We're just looking at changing the lot lines, basically.
Charlie, you're looking for this tonight by changing these interior lot lines. Is this effectively taking two lots that are currently not lots?
Doesn't change the zoning requirements on the lots.
I'm not asking for change in zoning requirement. What I'm looking at is the circle under the new lot lines fits, the old lot lines doesn't fit. So this is effectively taking a lot.
I don't remember when that requirement for a circle was put into the zoning.
I can answer your question on that. The previously approved plan from back in 2011 had those circles in different locations than where they're shown now. So if you look at Lot 1006A1, the former lot lines are those dashed lines, and they had that circle back in 2011 a little closer to the road. So it still met that 180-foot lot shape factor.
Closer to the road, you said it fit in there?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You said it fit in there before?
It did, yeah. The lots were a little different looking, but
There
I
is
think-
no requirement that the construction be done within that circle. It's just they have to demonstrate that the,
No way.
right.
There is a portion of the statute that says if all you're doing is, it says adding or taking away from a lot so as not to affect the frontage is not considered a subdivision, so you could sign it under that portion of the law. That's 81L again. So, the fact that it was there before and you're just modifying the interior frontage and the frontage still remains, it's probably acceptable to do. If you were creating 3 lots out of one, then you might want to take a look at the frontage of the individual lots themselves, but that's not what's happening here.
can I get a motion?
Make a motion to approve the A&R.
Second?
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
I think it's buried.
We all set? Just want to make sure.
Don't forget your Mylar.
Are you, I'm going to take the plan back?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I picked it up that another time. I'll hang tight.
We don't want it hanging around.
Okay, fair enough.
You want just one copy, or you want
Just
two?
sign up.
Didn't smudge it, did you? Next is a public hearing for the Beaver Path subdivision modifications. In your packet, you should have a proposed agreement that successor to the homeowners agreement, I believe. This is to modify the approval of the, be the,
I think it's your signature on this one, too.
what's this,
This is for the, in the form.
is there a date on that anywhere?
Yeah.
There we go. Let me not to forget my glasses next time.
There you
Ah. Sure. Do we have language to that effect? The Wareham Planning Board will hold a public hearing on June 10th, 2019 at 7 PM in room 320, the Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, to consider the revision of a definitive subdivision plan for Pocaro Realty LLC, care of Bill Bayshant, seeking to revise the decision to require a drainage maintenance agreement in lieu of a homeowners association located. That's incorrect. It's located off of Galt Road. Swiss Beach Road.
Different subdivision.
Different beaver.
Yeah, it looks like the notices were sent to the right place.
That's wrong?
Hmm?
The ad is wrong?
Yeah. But the abutters of Beaver Path were notified. I don't know what that, how that affects it. So as stated, you're seeking relief of the creation of the homeowners association for the purpose of taking care of the drainage easement?
Yes.
Developer, applicant, and thereafter his heirs or assigned shall be required to establish a drainage maintenance agreement between the developer and the town of Wareham in lieu of a homeowners association. Drainage maintenance agreement approved by the town council shall remain in force until such streets and utilities are accepted by the town of Wareham.
And this is what the town council, Rich Bowen, has approved, the drainage maintenance.
And this also include roadway maintenance, is it? Oh,
I don't recall.
well, that is part of the drainage, I guess. Questions?
Curious, if the gentleman did not have to take over the homeowners association responsibilities, would we still be doing this?
If he did not have to take, if it had been created, no, well, no, there wouldn't be a need for us to do this.
There were many attempts to try to create a homeowners association.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to address?
Hey, Jim Manise, Cranberry Highway. Where is Beaver Path located?
It's off of Galt Road, probably halfway between Cranberry Highway and Main Street.
Was it a condition of the granting of the development that a homeowners association be created?
Correct.
And who's the director or the manager of Pocaro LLC?
That I do not know.
Through you?
I am.
You are. Who were the realtors or the broker of the properties?
There was a variety of them. As a matter of fact, another builder was supposed to finish the subdivision and did not.
But it was Pocaro LLC, and you're the director or the manager of Pocaro LLC? Okay. Is there a bond out on this at this time, or cash bond?
Yes, there is a bond.
And I believe the proponent was here about 2 months ago asking the same reprieve for another non-created homeowners association. That all should have been done at the time of the sale and transfers of these properties to the homeowners and as a condition of them. It wasn't done. Who's going to be responsible for it if the proponent moves out of state? Right now you have a cash bond which gives you some surety that you'd be able to cover it.
Yeah,
Or the
well,
town would have to. Other than that, you take it over personally, but if you move out of state or if something happens to you, there's no cash bond, and the town owns it. This is the second time in 2 months that a development by Mr. Bouchant is asking to be forgiven of not creating a homeowners association.
That's
The
not
other one
true.
was,
First of all, the town would not own any part of this until such time as it was accepted by the town.
who would be responsible for it?
I would be, and whoever owns the land. It's a lien put on the land, that it's the responsibility of whoever is the landowner.
Right, and if
And even if I wasn't in town, whoever owns that land would have to be responsible for it.
so if the town took it over,
The town can't
for-
take it over, it's a
for
privately owned
lack of
property.
taxes being paid on that property, then the town owns it. I just, I just think that if there are conditions that go along with the creation and sales of subdivisions, then those should be enforced.
Who's going to enforce it?
Uh,
I can't force the homeowners to do it.
Just as per a previous discussion, what we were faced with is a bond for road construction, could it be held up by lack of a homeowners association? And that question was posed to town council, and this is the agreement that they've arrived at as a way to resolve the question. That was pretty much how we got here.
Resolve the request for the return of the bond, the cash bond, correct?
Mhm.
Well, that's all I have to say. I mean, I just hope going forward that when people are required to create homeowners associations, that it's done so. And There's a number of them out there. I don't know if they've all been created or not, and how many times people are going to come back because they didn't do the due diligence to ensure that these homeowners associations were created at the time of the sales. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions from the board? If there's nothing further, I'd look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing?
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed? So moved. What's your pleasure? This is, the purpose of this is just to change the order of conditions. It's not to... As I said, is that acceptable means to take over the maintenance of the remaining duties of the homeowners association?
Essentially, he is a homeowners association of one.
Correct. I think at this particular time, you control 3 lots?
I control all the land around it, and I may end up buying one of the other lots, but
And this covenant will run with that deed?
yes.
Basically, all we're doing is taking the responsibilities of what would have been the homeowners association and placing them on his shoulders.
Correct.
Nothing's being pushed aside and not attended to, it's just changing who's gonna be responsible for it.
His success isn't assigned, so it runs with the property. Anyone care to make a motion?
Entertain a motion that, the homeowners association of one.
Many homeowners associations I'm familiar with, it all falls on one person anyway.
Small hand.
So the motion at this point would be to replace the requirement of, amend the order of conditions to replace the homeowners association with the operation and maintenance plan and covenant dated
June 10th.
May 13th.
Where you get May from?
That's what's written on the agreement.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at what we got here.
Was that a second?
That was the second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Sign this or something else? Here. Is that it?
Make sure that gets recorded, George.
One of the conditions.
Well, the bond won't be released until it is. Next item of business, we've done that, is site plan review special permit for Factory 5 Racing, 7-9 Tow Road.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
But he wouldn't give you the keys to that truck.
Nope, Bill didn't hear.
What's that?
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, I'll second it.
One minute, I'm trying to get the plans distributed. Floor is yours.
Bill Madden here on behalf of Factory 5 Racing. I think at the last meeting, one of the major things that I did not have with me was the rendering, the elevations of the building. We delivered those later that week to the planning board office. That plan in front of you shows the existing building. So this is the information that we provided. So that's the existing building. What we did as far as the architecture on that is Cape Building Systems was the company that built the original building for Factory 5. Cape Building Systems to do the addition or do the new building for them. And what the owner wanted was essentially a building that matched the existing building. So they provided us with this rendering of the existing building, a floor plan of the proposed building, the 12,400 square feet proposed building, with designation of the areas you would have the loading dock, the overhead door that's shown, and also the small addition that's going to go on to the existing building. It's a 20 by 44 addition to the showroom that's on, I guess it's the west side of the existing building. So that brings us back to the proposed building. And you can see that the proposed north elevation is the front of the building. It has the windows, the metal siding, and then on the lower half of a portion of it, it's that, I guess for a trade name, I'd call it the drive-it. It's the styrofoam material that's coated with a cementitious type of coating on it. Looks like stucco. So that was the small portion on the front of the existing building. It's going to be mirrored on the proposed building with the windows above the ground floor windows. Those are just, there's no second story proposed on the existing building, but it's likely to have a mezzanine inside for the storage of some material. So the deal was that we just tried to mirror this building with the new addition. So that was one of the major things that I left out from the original plan. You might recall, here's the front of our existing building. There's our proposed building. We have essentially located driveway that we spoke about at the last meeting that will divide the two properties, the warehouse building and then the manufacturing building on the east side of that. There's also a question relative to some elevations at the rear of the property. In this area here, on the existing, at the rear of the property, on the existing conditions plan, well, sheet 4, right, you can basically see what has happened here is there's a lot of material that was stockpiled on this lot, on the police bakery lot, by the abutter. I consulted with Factory 5 Racing, and when that portion of land was, when the abutting landowner acquired this parcel here, apparently he stockpiled quite a bit of material there in the form of rocks and boulders, things of that nature on this lot. So all we have is the topography of those piles, but in discussions with Factory 5 staff, the elevation that was on this site was essentially the same elevation that we have at the rear of Factory 5, at the rear of 1004D. And these piles are just rock, they are rock piles. So, you know, I think the comment was made that we didn't have a lot of information on that, because we didn't dig through them. We did our test pits in various locations across the site. We've done work on this site, we've done work back in the industrial park. And it looks to me that the base grade in the rear of the site is around 51 or 52, thereabouts. And we think that all those stones are piled on top of it. If you would be so inclined to approve the project and condition it, you know, perhaps a condition could just be put on the project that, you know, we assess the ground surface on which those stockpiles had been placed for consistency with what we have throughout the site. But that's the information that I was given relative to what took place there. Those piles essentially appeared overnight. It literally appeared overnight. So no one really knows too much about it other than one day they were there. One day they weren't there, the next day they were. So.
That means they appeared overnight with this.
If the person who put them there was so inclined to remove them overnight, I suppose so. But you know, they'll need to be removed for the construction of the building. Allegedly, the person who stockpiled them had permission from the prior owner to use that area for a stockpile. The property's been conveyed. It was conveyed over a year ago. He has no rights to, you know, he hasn't been granted permissions to use that as a storage yard. They're working with them to have that material removed, and I think that's probably the best I can do for an explanation as to its current status relative to that material and as it relates to the common. Because we do have drainage proposed here. We have a drainage basin proposed in this small area. And when we look at the spot grades and the topography that was around that 51, 52 number that shows up on sheet number 3. If you look at each spot grade, you'll see a 51.2, a 51.2, a 51.7, a 51 and 52 over these other areas. So it's lending the impression that that was a relatively flat piece of ground that material was deposited on. So that's how I conclude what I conclude from reading the topography and the discussion with Factory 5 confirmed that condition. So that's a disposition of the rocks. You know, they do need to be removed, and we can do whatever's necessary to ensure after the removal. Gladly go out and dig a test pit. We have one test pit right at the outside edge, running 10 feet to groundwater. We don't expect any issues. So that's what I have as far as that goes. As I recall, I think that was pretty much the two major outstanding issues. As I recall, it could be more if there is. I'm glad to address them.
How do we reconcile the facades with section 752.12 of the bylaw regarding windows?
Well, it is site plan review. I guess you could condition it in any way, that you'd like. We read that section of the bylaw as being pretty specific. It only allows 4 building materials. I think that it's kind of very restrictive in some respects, but that's not for me to say. I think that it'd be more important to have a building match the needs and the desires of a longstanding business that's been in town and what have you. And I think that the board has the authority to allow the building to be constructed as proposed. I think it just adds a little symmetry to the site, and I think it adds identity as well. I mean, it is, it does look like the Factory 5 building, and that's what it's intended to be, is a...
Well, in fact, your existing building, in terms of the proportion of the windows, is more in keeping with the bylaw than these elevations are. So that's, if you look at the proportions of the windows on this facade and the proportions of windows on this facade, they're different. That is more in keeping, or the existing is more in keeping.
Yep.
But then the other question that is not being addressed is the amount of openings, the amount of, and I think that should be adhered to. What is the material? It's not called out.
Well, it's going to be like an standard storefront type glazing for the windows, aluminum.
I'm sorry, the facade material.
Some of it is metal and some of it's like dry-bit. It's a stuccoed faced styrofoam, essentially. I mean, that's what dry-bit is.
The portion at the entry, under the...
Yes, the lower portion of the entry.
Where the 99% is metal.
Your existing building shows the frontage, the stucco part, on the right side of the building. Your main entrance and your... Are your proposed buildings the same way, or is that going to be on the left side to kind of mirror this?
Oh, it's the same way. Start ignoring parts of the bylaw, why are we here?
Regarding the bylaw, the section 752.11 talks about building materials in the exterior and gives the 4 different materials. It goes on to say that there are exceptions are subject to approval by the Industrial District Design Review Committee. Since that committee is not functional, I think it's within the right of the planning board to take that role of deciding on exceptions to the approval to those 4 materials.
But if we include steel in this particular case, then what's next building, that goes, that's half of the material.
Always a case where you make a decision on the unique conditions of each permit that comes before you.
We were faced with a very similar question on the building.
And I believe that they responded with facade improvements, materials that on the side that face the street.
I would be of the mind to maybe go to meet in the middle and say, oh, well, the entire building is maybe the forward-facing facade would incorporate more of those materials.
Didn't you have a comment?
Well, just to Ken's point, when he said, you know, you mentioned something about another building. Well, at least in this instance, they already own a building in town, and it's been there for quite a period of time. And, you know, the rationale to use the same type of construction and type of finishes that you have on that existing building to one that you're proposing seems to make some reasonable degree of sense. I mean, it's not a situation where it's just a building that one individual is putting up for their own benefit, adjacent to somebody else's building. So
Okay.
So there is a little bit of, there was a little bit of thought put into what the owner and the operator of the business would like to see out there. And, you know, let's not lose sight of what it is at the end, what it is at the beginning of Toll Road and what it is at the end of Toll Road. You know, it's far from pristine in any respect. This building clearly is a huge improvement over the structure that currently exists at that location. I mean, it's just another improvement to Toll Road in that industrial park. And granted, it doesn't really fit squarely within the box that's prescribed by zoning. There is a couple of caveats in the zoning bylaw that gives everybody a little bit of latitude on it. But I think that when we look at what the business has done in town over years, what they continue to do, how they continue to grow, how they continue to stay in the town, and continue to improve the properties that they own, I think that has to be given some degree of credit in this instance, and, you know, particularly where, you know, they are matching up to what they have there, and it will give some true identity to Factory 5 Racing as someone drives down Toll Road to and views that right-hand side at the end. So that's all I can really add as far as rationale on the architecture. We didn't prepare the plan. That was the direction that was given the builder by the owner.
Thank you. And with all due respect, your position that repeating what is there is appropriate, I don't agree with. In fact, it's very boring looking at 100 feet of steel, and it would be very nice if there were a little different, some difference, so that the scale, you're simply going to extend the scale of the same material, which is not in the best interest of a visual reaction. So I don't think that that's a strong reason for maintaining. Let's not forget how the speaks about the fact that if there are not enough windows, again, to give some scale to this structure, and the windows that are on this facade are unacceptable in terms of their proportions. So,
That's, what looks like a blue stripe from here is actually an overhang, correct?
yeah, it's a shadow, it's a
Yeah.
shadow. That lower portion is recessed, apparently. Although the shadow should have gone over the windows also, so it's not accurately readed.
You know, my exposure, I haven't been up there in a while, but my recollection is it's a well-kept, well-maintained site and very busy. And the only comment would be that it looks like your building that you're putting up, everything is on the opposite end if you flipped it and put your entrance, so it kind of continued this, that I think it might, I mean, that's subjective kind of a look at it, but it seemed like it would match up better that way. Or maybe even, as far as the windows go, just match them with the other facade. Did you say up there is gonna be a mezzanine?
Said it could be a mezzanine. I think it's just to let some additional light into the space, and we had some discussions about a mezzanine for some, to store longer pieces of material that aren't really suitable for storage in the existing building.
Looking at the floor plan and the positioning of the private offices, break room, et cetera, which are what are driving the windows,
It could be flipped.
could that be flipped and have those offices on the right-hand side of that drawing? Correct, in that corner as opposed to the corner it's in now. That would bring all of your facade features to the inner corner, which would mate them up with the features of the existing building, almost sort of like one big building somebody drove a street tour.
I know that this mechanical room in this corner here, we tried to join all of the offices, the break room, and the toilet was with that mechanical room, all the utilities come in.
That corner.
In that corner from the site, and I think as we move over to the east, there was a little bit more congestion, there's utility poles in the driveway, and I think that, one of the other things that when we look at the layout of Toll Road on the opposite side, what we're trying to do is take away from this expansive part of pavement here. The layout of Toll Road goes right, not even 20 feet away or 15 feet away from the parking spaces in the front of this building. So what we try to do is just give, from a site perspective, a little bit more identity to the two buildings. We try to do somewhat common corridor, to take the buildings on the main building back here, this building back, at the same time allow them to come around to the easterly side. But we have all those utilities there. We get really jammed up with underground drainage, street utilities and things like that. So that was the major reason why I think that those offices were sited on that side of the building.
I mean, that argument makes sense.
Yeah.
It'd be costly to move all.
Yeah, I mean, it's, that's just how it worked out.
The thing is, the way the presentation is, Mike, it makes it feel like those two buildings belong together. Whether the presentation on the first one wasn't quite acceptable, I think the two of them, it makes them go together because they are together. That's the way I feel, but I don't think it's that big of an issue on that situation. And stick up for the tenant a little bit. Like I said, it has been a plus to the town.
I hear all that, I agree with all of the good things, but why do we have to have a gun to our head to accept a building that could be better?
Well, we could have better buildings, but
Forgive me, but this isn't the first time when buildings are brought to us with complete denial of what's in this code. Why do we have this? Why do we have that? You're way short on windows. I'm sorry, I mean,
No, I'm not an architect, and I didn't design the building, so, I mean, I'm just,
but it would be useful if the client is told, look, this is what we have to do to comply with the zoning, and there's a good reason, with the bylaw, and there's a good reason for it. I can deal with the argument or the idea of, since the existing building has the metal, that can be reasonably extended to the new building. But why those blank 100-foot by 200 square foot facades with nothing on them? The business is going to continue doing well, but I have to drive by it and look at it. Not I, but the town does. We have an obligation to produce better looking work. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying it to my colleagues on the board.
So, some additional windows along the,
George, it doesn't matter where, I mean, it spells out here that, and for good reason, to break up that monotonous surface.
what my
Then
point
decide where
was,
to put them.
what my point was, the monotonous surface that you referred to, the one that really shows is the easterly side?
It's the eastern, the code specifies that it's either on a public way or an internal way, so it's the,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong building. So that would be the westerly side.
The north and east.
The north is the front,
Yeah, the
more or less.
facade facing the street, and that's the one under the review of the regulation.
And the proportions also. I mean, nobody looked at the goal. The existing one, those windows are consistent with the proportions in the bylaw, the existing. These are not. It's not a big deal to look at what's in here, and good visual judgment, and present it to us. This isn't the first time.
Looks like the north elevation is pretty close as far as the glass area. It's just not symmetrical.
No, it's not.
It's very close to what the other building has in terms of glass.
In terms of quantity, the north elevation is 135 square feet short of opening door windows, and the east elevation is, because of the large base door, you know, the garage doors, that's 85 square feet short. But the north, which is essentially the front, I guess, that's the one that's 135, plus or minus 135 square feet short.
So basically what you're saying is they should have more windows in the front.
That's an unreasonable, if we're gonna acquiesce to the steel facade, then I think there shouldn't be a request.
Well, on the facade, you're matching the stucco,
Yes.
or is that split face? I can't.
Bill, can you get us more windows in the front?
Well, we're talking about 160, I mean, I don't know how much the windows cost and what have you, and I'd like to,
Yeah.
okay. Could we just add, like, how many square feet of windows you want added to the front?
Well, have the architect do it with his eye so that it looks good. And it may be 7 windows, maybe 15 windows, but, you know, we're not going to tell you how many windows to
Well, it's a
add.
homework assignment otherwise, and when we get it right, you'll let us know, and I get that part.
We're getting the crux here. Got to understand that this builder, or this architect builds metal boxes.
So,
Somebody has to tell them, or maybe direct them, on to make a better metal box.
Are you looking for symmetry? Is that what you're
No.
trying to achieve? or-
but that's not the right word. I'm sorry, gentlemen. It's the architect's job to bring this thing, first of all, in compliance with the code, and then use the elements in a way that is, it's personal. You want me to do it? I mean, I've done,
Well,
I don't want to do any more
that's your
designs for
expertise.
clients.
Kinda.
No.
You tell me what you want, we'll do it.
I'm
For the
sorry,
minimum
you
standard.
know, it's not your, you know, it's not, you're not doing this, someone's not doing the right thing for you, that's all.
The minimum standard is 15% of the facade to be windows and doors, openings within the wall.
So the existing 9-toe does match?
No. No, the proportions of your old the
Okay.
proportions of the windows in your existing building are much better proportions and consistent, very close to what this requires. The windows being proposed for your new building are not as well proportioned, and they're not,
That was done by my direction, of me telling them I want to copy this building with a smaller scale.
they didn't copy. I had that question too when I saw I thought it was a sophisticated rendering. I didn't know that this was the existing building. But these windows are, anyway, have them look at the code, at the bylaw, and it's not a big deal.
I mean, timing is becoming a big deal with us. I mean, is it possible to condition it and then come back with a plan for approval prior to the issuance of a building permit? You know, there's issues with the tenant in the other building, the notification that needs to be given. You know, we don't have any objection to dealing with the windows according to Factory 5 in, well, I'm just trying to see if it's possible to move it along, condition it accordingly, and we'd be happy to comply.
I got no problem with that. I think that's something that we can work with to keep this from stalling in the middle of the street here, to move on.
I mean, if you tell us the square footage that we're looking, a rough square footage, or per that, the 15% per the guidance, we'll do that, and then,
Well, I think proportional to the existing building, is that?
No, consistent with what this says. And you're going to have, you will end up with more windows than the existing building. That's okay. That's all right.
A couple of questions, if I may. Bill, you say that the grading around the back is roughly elevation 51, similar to what's at the rear of the existing building?
well, that's kind of, yeah, that's what I picked off from just looking at those spot grades.
The original plan suggested that there had to be a stone retaining wall back there. So if that is the old grade, if 51's around the old grade, what does that do for the grading of the back of that problem?
Not sure.
Well, there's an existing,
No, I'm just saying, if that is the grade, and you just made the statement, you thought that's what the grade was, are you going to keep that grade and then hold the existing contouring and the raised-up berm that's at the back of the property? What's going to happen back there?
it would be about a 1 foot berm or less. This is a 52, we show 52 going around the backside then.
What's the high part of the berm?
Well, there's a 51.7, for example, right here, and a 51 right there.
So are you saying that the existing grading without the use of retaining wall, the way that you have it shown on the plan, is sufficient?
Oh, I see what you're saying, this retaining wall
Yeah,
right here.
yeah.
I'm seeing some 57s, 58s there, too.
Those are that's the pile of stone.
Oh, okay.
I'd just like to see that portion of the plan completed so that when somebody goes out there for an inspection for the grading and so forth, that we're looking at a finished product. If it is 51, then I guess you got to grade to 51. If it isn't, and you got to do something else, then I think you need to look at finishing that off.
Is there any schedule for him removing his debris pile from the site?
I think the 52 ties off to, I think the 52 ties off, so it would be, the grading is tied off. So the 52 ties to a 52 over here, ties to another 52. Right
So
here,
that-
backside of the parking lot.
So that wall, that proposed retaining wall could be eliminated without any
Yes,
problem?
Yeah. Doesn't look like it needs to be there to me at all.
I would say then that would be the appropriate thing to do, would be eliminate it off the plan, make that part of the plan set, and then when the time comes, after the stone has been removed, if you have to adjust it, do the adjustments and let the board know what it is.
Okay.
The only other question I had, Mr. Chairman, that we had discussed before, I asked the question about putting that 20-foot extension of the building into a drainage easement or a sewer easement, whether or not you needed approval from other people that had rights in that sewer easement. I don't think I heard anything tonight on that respect.
We weren't able to uncover any documentation on that easement anyplace. I spoke to Guy Campina about it today, and, he didn't honestly know. He just knows that it's connected to his sewer system.
It's a
And
private sewer line. It isn't anything to do with the town. It never was, because it was put in as a part of when they developed Toll Road and agreed to put in a sewer line that would connect for the Rockland Trust Bank. That's basically why that line was put in there.
the line was there when Rockland Trust was put in, as far as I recall, and I think that...
That's right, because Toll Road and its construction was put in first.
Toll Road was in, yeah, was done first, right? And, we've just not been able to uncover anything that says who's in control of it, who has, it's one of those,
So long as everybody understands and that you generally don't put a structure on top of a sewer easement, as I'm sure you know. But if that's the way it's going to be, then it ought to be acknowledged that it's understood, or they are agreeing that they understand that it's there. And it will be their responsibility, and it shouldn't fall back on the planning board for whatever issue may develop because of it. That's all.
Did the sewer department have any comments or concerns about?
his only concern was asking me what was, how the warehouse building was to be used, and if there were any overhead garage doors, and I told him that that we had that one small garage door on the east side, and that we were placing a floor drain in the garage to accommodate that door, and that we're tying it into an MDC trap outside before we're tying into the sewer system. So he was satisfied that we're providing proper pre-treatment from the building. But that was about it.
Does that line float to Toll Road or the other way?
No, it goes down. It runs in this direction down to this sanitary manhole. This comes back across here, goes through the industrial park and then to 195.
Bill, just for reference, it would also help if these long 120, 200-foot long facades, they should be broken.
Find really no objection for me on those types of things, but
Pass that on to your clients so that they can pass it on to their designers, so that we're not faced with having the pressure of understanding his schedule, and we're looking at huge pieces of metal that go on for, some of them are 200 feet long. And
I know.
I believe they have an obligation. Do something with it. Don't bring it to the board again with the gun to our head. I understand the gentleman's position. He's got a schedule to meet. So what are we doing here now, making him go back and redesign? It can be done in the beginning. And the engineers who bring the projects to us, you know this. Tell them.
oh, believe me, I'm the first person that speaks up about the bylaw and what's in the book and what people are supposed to do, and I do it on a fairly regular basis. But I can't convince people.
As long as this jerk is on the planning board, ain't gonna pass. Change it, do it, fix it.
No, I mean,
Should I stop? I'm serious, Bill.
no, I mean, and I get it. I do understand.
But our obligation here is not only to help the proponent, we have a bigger obligation to the town. And I'm tired of driving up and down the main ways of Wareham and looking at the ugliness that we're allowing to be built.
Well, you know, since you're on the subject, there's a lot of enforcement that can be directed to a lot of people in town, and it's been that way for, whether you're talking about conservation, planning, or building, and I can do the same thing. And I make a habit of doing that, and I make a lot of my own mental notes, and whether it's hay bales on the wrong side of a silt fence, or, you know, and you watch a building project just get built and what have you, or, you know, abandoned vehicles in somebody's yard, 6, 7, 8 of them, trucks, crap everywhere, you know. I've been here for 30 years. I've seen it all. I've seen a lot.
Thanks for listening.
No problem, thanks, likewise.
I'm just trying to go through the steps as to how we can move forward. We could close with the exception of receiving the architecturals and the additional drainage requirements.
I had no other comments, by the way. I had looked at the revised plan that they did before, and all of my comments were addressed. They made some changes in the paving and so forth that was going to the back of the new building, made some other adjustments there, which I had asked for, so it was just that one hanging issue from the previous meeting. So if we can get the plan revised for that, yeah, if we can get that revision done along with the architecturals, then I'll be happy with it.
Some things being taken care of?
Yeah, that they be submitted for approval. That motion?
We're gonna close the public hearing first, right?
Yeah, but you're still going to accept information regarding the architecturals and the retaining wall. So you'd still be looking from that information from the client.
Bill, also, if they could let us know what the colors are.
Colors.
Thank you.
Okay.
Beth Thompson. Beth Thompson.
So a motion to close with the exception of the final information on the architectural drawings and the retaining wall in the rear of the property.
Yeah, that's my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We do have, didn't you have something there?
No, we have standard conditions and any new conditions you want to add on to. Although you said you wait until the public hearing's over, I think you condition any kind of approval based on submittal of plans that are approved before a building permit is issued.
Mhm. So you have the typical plan, the typical conditions with the outstanding information, part of the conditions that the final plans be approved prior to issuance of building. That work for everybody?
Yep.
Oh. Anybody make a motion?
I move to what you just said.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Back there,
Good
Sparky.
evening.
Thanks a lot. No problem.
Then we have site plan review special permit for Bay Point, Onset Ave, phases 2 and 3.
Good evening.
I need a set of these. You can have these. Whatever. I got a full set for you, too. Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, I think I need to say something by way of informing the board. One of my house clients has selected a product for her house that is produced or provided by Stone Street. And I've been working with Stone Street as the architect. I have no financial interest in it, but I just think the board should know that I am managing the process of using their product in my client's house.
Didn't know they had a product.
Enough said. I can tell you what it is, but it's a good product.
We distribute a low-voltage radiant heat product on behalf of a St. Louis manufacturer.
And unfortunately, I did my house 3 years ago. I have a radiant floor, but with water, and I didn't know about that.
Me too. I did it 2 years before I started distributing this product.
Great system, and it's about 40%, 30, 40%. I sound like I'm
40%.
selling your product.
No, it's-
You're doing good.
Very good. Less than normal gas or oil heat
Operational or?
operation.
'cause
Send my check in the mail.
Electric radiant is,
It's low voltage.
had a questionable past.
Actually, this isn't the product that you're thinking. It's a polycarbon fiber. It's a low voltage
I'm not
radiant
familiar
heat
with the low
product.
voltage
Yeah.
product. Hopefully, they've improved it over the years.
Anyway, for full transparency, just want you to know.
It's unique, George.
Mhm.
You ever see property line square like that?
That's the
That's the
onset,
water tower, yeah.
yeah, that's onset standpipe.
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Tom Pritzby, Pritzby Engineering Company, good evening. We're here with Tim Fay and Chris Reynolds. We were here last month providing updated plans for revisions to the Bay Point Club Phases 2 and 3. It was considered a major modification to the plan set. We went over, as you recall, last month, some of the revisions to the original approval. There were some comments by the town engineer, Mr. Rowley, which we addressed. Also, I'd like to note that last Monday, we met with Mr. Buckland and Mr. Rowley on the revised plan set. We reviewed it in detail. There were a few other additional comments that Mr. Rowley had in which we addressed, and that's what the board has in front of you this evening. Those plans were dropped off last Thursday to Ken's office, and there was a little bit of a correspondence this morning, Mr. Rowley, between the two of us on the sewer pump station itself. There was some information that Mr. Rowley was asking about, which we provided to him. Also, we have an approval from the sewer department. Mr. Guy Campina reviewed the sewer pump station design and details and specifications and issued a approval for those plans itself. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board or Mr. Rowley has this evening.
An issue came up regarding the changes in the lot lines in Phase 1. Did that get relayed to you folks? That
I'm not aware of any such issues of that.
I don't know if it got resolved. You may want to check with I guess the assessors were having trouble matching your parcels up to what's filed, so that's outside of this. But we did make changes to the parcels, as you recall, and
Correct.
that they may not be on file. So you might want to check that.
That was recorded.
All righty.
I'll call you. They may have resolved it already. I just happened. The description didn't match up with what they had. Was the entire sewer system plan laid out? Or
Yes, it
just-
is.
Correct.
I have some full sets here if it's hard to read the small.
Is there a landscape plan? No.
That was part of the original approval itself. This is a modification. And again, for members that were not here last month for the initial presentation, the main purpose of the modification is to increase the spacing between the dwelling units. We're not increasing the number of units that was originally proposed. We're only providing additional space and square footage in between itself, which is why we provided what's now formerly known as Anchor Way, proposed Anchor Way, which is a cul-de-sac. Here, off to the north side of here's Starboard Drive, that connects. Boom, short back to Bay Point, and then we have Beacon Street, and then we created Anchor Way, which is a cul-de-sac providing for some additional units, just to decrease that quote-unquote density that we had originally. So the same number of units apply.
But you increased the number of single-family.
I believe, yes, that's correct. Yep.
And Anchor Way is now a subdivision roadway?
No, it's a shared driveway. So it's not a platted right-of-way. It's a shared driveway. It's not within the layout. There's a layout for Starboard Drive and Beacon Street. So we have a full 40-foot layout for Starboard Drive, and then a 40-foot layout for Beacon Street. This is just a shared driveway.
And the rubber bands.
Tim, are you committed to these plans, to the house plans?
So, right now, we have 5 approved plans. We're working on revisions to those plans and additional plans that, when complete, we will come back in front of the board and we'll share with the board.
But all of these that are in this package, they continue the articulation of garage, and then someplace in the back is the front entrance.
Those reflected on that plan are the plans that have been approved to date, and we're in the process now of
I'm sorry,
working,
approved by whom?
the planning board.
Yeah, I guess I misunderstood when we met about a year ago with Ken, and when I suggested a different layout that would recess the garage and bring
Yeah.
the entrance forward, that you would maybe consider that.
We are in the process of finalizing what the offering for Phase 2 will be. These plans reflect what was previously approved by the board, and when we have additional plans, we will come in and we will share those and present them to the board.
And is it too late to apply that new approach to these?
No, absolutely not. In fact, in plan, as we did in Phase 1, as we're doing here, all of these units are interchangeable based on what the client selects, right? So what you're looking at is a particular unit really as a placeholder. Where it's a duplex unit, it will be a duplex unit. Where it is a single-family unit, it will be a single-family. But the actual home they select, it may be of this version or that version, and then we'll get it on the site at the time that the market selects what it's looking
Excuse me,
for.
but are you showing them the other version?
Are we-
Or are they selecting only from these?
No, when we get to Phase 2, we will have an expanded offering of units that we're presenting to the market. The Phase 2 changes that we're making were made to really to respond to what the market was telling us. And what it is saying is the single-family unit is more desirable than a side-by-side or a duplex unit. So we're in the process now of coming up with additional offerings in a single-level, single-unit style that we will have back in front of this board for its comment and review prior to it being offered.
Thanks, Tim. Just to make myself clear, I was hoping that I would see the garages not being the prominent entry feature.
Right.
And in this set, that's what they all are.
It is the continuation of the product that we're currently offering that's reflected on that plan. That will not be what someone ultimately chooses. It may or it may not be, but there will be additional offerings for people to choose from.
Thank you.
When we initially discussed this plan, we talked about an exit or something off the southern end of the room. Is that something that's doable, at least during construction, to take relieve some of the issues on the more populated end?
So you're referring to the Lacasse property here, Mr. Chair? The southern end?
No.
Or you're talking about the other side?
I'm talking about making some sort of accommodation for some of your traffic to go out that way rather than disturb the residents on the other end.
Well, for this side of the project, the south side, correct? Yeah, again, this is ultimately at the project, after it's over, there's gonna be a gate there. But again, that intention is to have the gate after it's fully developed itself, so we could easily talk to the Public Works Department to make sure they're okay with having some construction vehicles go in and out of there. I know we spoke a little bit last meeting about some of the neighbors might not be too happy about it, but it might be the most efficient way to have the construction vehicles coming in and out on that side.
There's no interference with Phase 1 at all, because the first Phase 2 building is way up on Bay Point Drive. So that for all of Phase 2 and 3, they're going to be going in the opposite direction from what it is today. So any complaints from the people on the other end of Cahoon Road should be negligible, shouldn't be any.
I'd like to think so, but, you know, again.
Well, I would think that-
You're subject to GPSs and
Right.
things like that send you the wrong way.
I would think that it would be appropriate, just my own opinion, that you keep it the way it is. Because you're going to have complaints from people on the other end of what is now Short Street, Short
Short Neck Road.
Short neck, yeah.
Road. Is blocked off right now. There's either trees or stones across it. So pulling that out and making that open to heavy traffic, I don't know as that would be too good. You'd have the same complaints rising from them as you have from the other end.
I know we left it with a gate there and.
Yeah, it's supposed to be for emergency purposes, in case you need it for
Correct.
emergency access. At least you've got a secondary means in and out.
Right.
There are 3 decisions to be made on the site plan approval, special permit for the district, and the subdivision. And what I've done is I've prepared a major modification for the special permit and site plan approval, reviewed this with town council, Rich Bowen, who okayed the idea of having them combined into one. Except the subdivision would be separate, a separate decision.
Do you have more comments on this, Charlie?
Yeah, a couple, and they relate to what I talked with Tom about today. I finally did get some details on the pump station, and I had a couple of questions for Tom. Trying to find the plan for it. It's toward the back. It's the pump station plan, I think it's number 16 of 18.
Yep.
Pump Tom, when you spoke to me today, you said that the well was a 6-foot diameter, but the plans show 5.
Yeah, so that's correction, Mr. Raleigh. Again, looking at the outside diameter is 6 feet, and then it's a 6-inch wall. So the correct one was my project manager, Josh Rosen, followed up with an email correction after your response. I'm not sure if you received that or not. I can read it for the board, but, so it's a 5-foot inside diameter.
Inside is 5.
Correct, yeah,
Okay,
it's
all right.
6-inch walls. Yep.
Just following along with that.
Yep.
In your comment, you said that this amounted to, in a 13-foot depth, amounted to 2,700 gallons. I'm not sure how appropriate or significant that 2,700 gallons is.
Yep.
Because you'll never have that capacity in the well.
Correct.
Between the shut-off point of the pump and the turn-on point of the first pump, it's only like 300 gallons.
Correct.
A heck of a lot less than 2,700, so it doesn't make any, there's no reason to even know that number.
Right, yeah, again, that was just an overall total volume. That wasn't significant to the actual pump design itself, so I didn't know if you just
Not
wanted to know the...
significant- It's not significant to the well either.
Correct, correct,
All
yeah.
right. I tried to figure out, based on your information, roughly what the rate of flow, what the rate would be, and how many times a day these pumps are going to come on as a result of the flows that you gave me. Now, I realize that peak daily flow are going to occur sometime between, say, 4 and maybe
6.
5:30, 6
4
o'clock
to
at
6.
night, something like that.
Yep,
I took these numbers that you have, both the numbers, the 32,000 and the 58,000, simply divided them by 24, knowing that that's not an actual peak flow, it's just
Sure.
an average flow.
Correct.
Okay?
Yep.
So that at some times of the day, the flow is going to be less than that, sometimes of the day, the flow is going to be more than that.
right.
But just based on those two numbers alone, when you look at the rate at which these pumps are going to come on, just taking the existing flow, forget the flow from phase 2, 3, and 4. In other words, the 32,896. That's going to be such that those pumps will come on the average, every 7 to 8 minutes. That
Correct.
seems like a pretty rapid rate, that maybe the well should be a little bit bigger in order to allow a little bit of rest time for those pumps. It'll take probably maybe a minute. No,
So it's 1 minute per cycle, so,
3 minutes for at a 32,000 gallon flow.
yep,
For that foot of volume which you have as a capacity in the pump.
correct, yep,
Fill up before the pump comes on.
right,
If it flows at 140 gallons a minute,
mm-hmm,
it isn't going to take but a minute or two.
2 minutes,
That whole thing to empty.
correct,
And then it's going to sit for maybe 6 or 8 minutes more, and it's going to have to come on again.
correct,
I tried to call Mr. Campina today, just to discuss that with him, to see
Sure.
what his
Yep.
thoughts were on that. It simply seems to me to be a little bit too frequent.
yep,
That maybe a sizing that changed either the diameter of the well, or at least gave you more capacity between the on and the
So we-
off for the first pump,
right.
would mean that your pumps wouldn't have to work as frequently.
So we actually cut the workload in half, so we have duplex wet wells, so there's two 5-foot inside diameter wet wells itself in the actual design itself on the sheet. Again, I don't
That's
think
not
they're
what
labeled
it's-
as 1 and 2, but you can
That's
see
not
the
what it's showing.
duplex. So in the detail, we have 2 wet wells that are connected, so what's going to happen is one of those pumps are going to kick on. Once that already pumps out and the float switch sets, then the other pump kicks on. So it's duplex alternating pumps, so it gives it twice as much resting
100
time.
gallon, your functional capacity of the wet well, or is that just a matter of changing the set point?
That's just the pump settings, the pump flow itself,
No,
correct?
You haven't got that much room, George. I'm going to have to take a look at this again. I didn't realize that you had 2 separate wells and a pump in each well?
So, correct, and you can see the plumbing configuration here that connect the two. In the top left corner of the page, there's 2 structures, 2 6-foot outside diameter structures
No, I'm
that are
seeing,
connected.
I'm seeing a pump station, and to the right of that is a valve chamber.
So the valve chamber, again, this was also designed with Boydco itself, and we went over this with Mr. Campina on the pump cycles, so that the two pumps, again, they're alternating duplex pumps, because in the event
I
you
understand
have one that
that.
breaks.
I understand that, but they're in the
Right.
same well in this plan.
Yep,
So there's not two wells, there's one well and two pumps in the well. And they alternate cycles,
correct.
so that every other cycle, the same pump comes on. But the
Correct.
cycling of the pumping action is
Yep.
going to just be no more than probably 8 minutes, 6 to 8 minutes.
At full capacity.
No, I'm using it on the basis of average, and that was just for the existing flow. That has nothing to do with the 58,000 that you'll get once you go to phase 4. Which means it's going to even be more rapid than that. So
Right.
I'm just suggesting that it looks like the well ought to be bigger in order to take a little bit more flow so that those pumps don't have to activate so rapidly.
Well, again, I mean, if you look at the pump performance curve, it's operating right in the performance curve itself, based on the total flow and the total dynamic head itself.
I understand that, and it's a
So
separate
it's-
issue.
Right.
I'm not debating the capacity of the pump to pump it.
Yep.
I'm debating the number of times per day that the pump is going to have to come on to handle the flow.
Yep.
And that's a different issue.
Yeah, and Mr. Campina reviewed that with Boydco. And again, he indicated that he'd like to see that pump come on more frequently just to clean that line. But again, certainly, the number of cycles is dependent on where you set the pump on and off itself. So
But your
again,
number of coming on from 18 to 22 times per day is not accurate at all.
it's actually, so again, there was a correction on that. It's going to be about 390 times per day for approximately 1 minute per cycle itself. 140 gallons per minute is our design conditions. And those pumps are made to run.
Yeah, I know.
Again, they're very efficient pumps.
I know.
And I understand your concern about not, I guess, if you think you're going to burn them out, but again, they need to keep alternating within 6 or 7 minutes of each other itself, just to keep that flow moving through there and keep the lines clean.
Well,
That's-
I was hoping that I'd get a call back. I called him
Yep,
probably 1:30 this afternoon. He was in a meeting. I
Mm-hmm.
asked him to call me back. I just wanted to verify it with him because I didn't know.
okay. I'll make sure he gets back to you, and again, if is a modification to the pump float settings, again, we can do that in the field very efficiently. And again, we're going to need to have a maintenance protection plan here with a service provider to monitor this, because again, with the initial phase, when we first put this pump station in operation, it's not going to see that 60,000
I understand that.
gallons per day. So they might have to modify the pump on and off settings itself to run a little bit more efficiently for that curve. So it's going to have to be.
It's going to have to be more frequently
Yep.
than what I
Correct.
calculated out just for the existing flow.
Right,
I'm saying 6 to
Right.
8 minutes for the existing flow for every cycle,
right,
not counting the new flow from
Yep.
phase 2, 3, or 4.
right.
When you go from 32,000 to 58,000, that frequency is going to get even closer
Correct,
because the capacity of the wet well isn't going to be any bigger.
right.
So it just seems to me that the well could be a little bit bigger to absorb a little bit more flow, which would give the pumps a little bit more of a rest time between the times when they kick on and kick off. Because right now, there's only a foot of water that it has to discharge, or can discharge, between the pump on and the pump off.
And starting is your weakest, is your heaviest load, so the longer you can keep it running, the better.
Yep,
That's one issue that I have with it. The other issue, I did ask you for a detail on the sewer manhole that went from a force main to a gravity main, which you did provide, and I appreciate that. I did a little bit of research on it, and I think we have to make a couple of small modifications on the dimensioning of it.
okay,
It suggested that the top of the force main pipe should be no higher than 1 inch below the invert of the outlet pipe, and that the channel actually pitches uphill. That helps to absorb some of the flow rather than charging directly into the gravity main.
okay,
So I can supply you with a detail that I got from that shows it.
okay.
That's the only change. We had talked at our meeting about possibly having it come from the outside with a drop, but that's only if the pipe is actually going to be
Based on
higher
the
than the flow.
elevations, they line up right at the invert.
It
Yep.
does mean that your pump force main has to be just below the gravity line elevation in that manhole and not above it. Otherwise, you have to get the drop and then put it in according to the details of the other dimensions. So
Okay.
if we can work that through, it won't take much to do that.
Okay.
The only other detail I saw, I was looking at the grading, which we looked at along Starboard Drive, and I see that you took care of the grades on that, adjusted some of the buildings.
Yep, we pulled those back as much as we could on the rear setback to give us a little bit more room to grade.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
The only other thing that I would ask you to look at would be on page 9 of 24, and it's at the cul-de-sac for along, we'll call it anchored way for today.
Anchor Way, yes.
Again, I think you're going to have to change the name of Anchor Way because there is an Anchorage Drive already in town in, not Maritime Estates. What is it down there?
Yeah,
Off
it
of
is down
Maritime
there.
Drive,
It is
anyway.
down there.
Yeah. And that might be confusing for 911, so you might want to take a look at that. But if you look at the center of the cul-de-sac, you put 3 spot grades in there. Why don't the spot grades line up with the flow line or the gutter line of the road and the catch basins that are at the end of the cul-de-sac?
So they do, that is the gutter line. So the catch basin's at the end of, we're calling it Anchor Way, where the flow arrows are. We have a high point at 35.6, which is the crown in the road. So that crown is going to continue along the center line stationing. So I have a low point on each side of the crown at 35.45 and 35.45 on each side. And again, I have directional flow arrows just to kind of give the contractor an idea of how we're trying to grade this. So there's going to be a gutter line. So the outside of the actual radius is going to be slightly higher with a 3/4 of an inch per foot pitch
I
to
understand
grade.
that. But if you were to carry the gutter line
Yep,
from the line of the 4 visitor spaces that are next to the cul-de-sac
yep,
and draw a straight line to those catch basins,
yep.
isn't that where the flow line of the gutter line should be?
That's correct, and that's what we show.
No,
On
you
the
don't.
flow arrows, I know you're looking at the 11 by 17.
No, well, it's the same on the big plan. They're not on that line. They're at some point inside that, so it's not really identifying the flow line at that point.
Again, I could articulate a little bit clearer, but again, we just showed 2 spot grades based on that 22-foot width and a crown at 35.6 with 2 flow arrows going in each direction, just to kind of identify that there is indeed a gutter line from the 4 parking spaces to my catch basin itself.
Well, I think we can put the spot grades on the gutter line, and that will make it a heck of a lot more obvious to the contractor that he's carrying that gutter line through. Because Station 3, the center line grade at Station 3 is 3570.
Yep.
You take 25 hundredths off of that, and that's 3555.
Yep.
I'm sorry, 3545.
Which I have, yes.
That would be the gutter line grade right opposite Station 3.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't be 3545 where you've got the X's. It's got to be lower than that because the rim grade at the catch basins is 3520. So it's got to be somewhere in between those 2 points. So it's a detail you and I can go over. We don't need
Okay.
to take up the board's time with that. The other things that we talked about, I think we've covered, but I do need a little bit more comfort level in the size of the well for the sewer pumps, and just get comfortable with the idea that there is a single well with 2 pumps, but the capacity is of a question because of the cycling. So if we can resolve that and just make this minor adjustment, I don't have any other issues to talk about. We did talk about the drainage easements. Yes, they were defined. I appreciate that. I think that was all that we really had left from last week.
Now, you are consuming more of the golf course.
We are in woods that are in various parts of the golf course, yes.
I see some vegetated areas, but now with the extension of the drainage easement, you're protruding more into the golf course.
Fortunately, I know the owner of the golf course, and it's not an issue.
I'm sure. What exactly is that doing to play? Is it changing the power of the course, or?
Absolutely not, no.
Other questions?
Oh, here we are, 13, 17.
Tim, could you talk about the sequencing of construction, or either you or Chris, let the board know what your thoughts are in terms of how this is going to actually develop over time?
So, I'd be happy to.
Been up there, Mike?
So not reflected on this plan is the work that we're doing down the fifth hole, this phase 1, 28 units that is part of Bay Point Drive and Kahuna. So you come in, this is the center of the main entrance. You come in now and you turn down and you head down towards the seventh hole where the village condominiums are. So we're gonna swing our direction down. This entire area is wooded right now between the 11th hole and 13th hole and the 12th hole. So this first setting will be this road with units on either side of this road. That will be the next phase. In that time frame, we're going to relocate the 12th hole by creating a new par 3 off of the first hole. We will get that work going so that we can make that switch on a moment's notice. And then we'll complete the ring road in here and then get to the perimeter and out into the extension here. So there's really 3 different thoughts of how we're going to attack the next 56 units that are reflected on this plan.
The squares designate the different holes?
Pardon me?
Do the squares designate the different holes?
Yeah, it's the numbers of the whole.
Whole number, yes,
Yeah, that's the
correct.
whole numbers.
18, I think those are the existing ones, 14 ones.
Good 16, go.
I don't think it does.
Not the current ones.
No, right. I mean, 12, that's not 12.
No, it's not 12, no.
That's the pavilion. So no, those do not designate that. I'm not sure what those numbers represent.
Those were there, I believe, from day one, so that might have been the old numbers. The whole numbers.
See the 16th green located in the elbow there, but I don't see,
This is not trying to put the golf course on this plan. So the golf course, with the exception of the 12th hole, which is being rebuilt in the plan previously, numbers are changing, but the holes themselves are not changing.
16's on the other side of the page. It goes, the relocating is 15. 16's over here, which is a par 3. You just can't see it on this sheet. It's just cut off.
This plan does not try to locate golf holes.
Yeah.
No.
It would be confusing to look at it that way.
We still have a 16.
didn't want you to tee off in somebody's living room. So.
So many layers.
So phase 2 is Starboard Drive.
Yes.
Correct, yes.
And then phase 3 is Beacon Street and what we're calling tonight Anchor?
Could I interject a question here, George? Uh, Tim, how close to complete will the revisions to the golf course be by the time you get ready for phase 3?
So the revisions to the second hole will be complete because we can't go to that phase until we have that hole open. So that portion of the renovation work to the golf course will be complete.
Is there any other revisions to the course that would be required?
Not necessary for this housing work.
Okay. I was just looking at the, one of the conditions of your special permit that says that the changes to the golf course will be completed before you begin phase 3.
Before the beginning of
Phase 3,
phase 3.
yeah. It's not specific to a hole, it's whatever changes were to be made to the golf course that they had to be done in their completion before phase 3 was started.
Right.
So.
Anything more as far as the definitive about Anchor Way? Is that,
What do you mean, George?
do we need more, I know they're saying it's a driveway, but
It's,
I think
it's the same as what Jetty Lane is in phase 1. That has no layout either. But that portion of the development gets its frontage off of the lot that
The larger
Jetty
lot.
Lane is within, and it's the same thing with this neck that goes off to the edge. It gets his frontage off of the rest of it that's on Beacon Street. So the construction is the same. There's no change in that. The
Other-
width is the same.
other than width,
Width is identical.
is it?
Yep.
They're all 22?
Yep, 22 including the berms. Or is it 22 at the gutter line? I keep forgetting.
I do it the gutter line,
22 at the gutter line, I guess, yeah.
11-foot lanes.
So it's a 24 altogether.
So you have some engineering details outstanding as far as the definitive approval?
Just that information on the special manhole that goes from force main to gravity. And I would like to get the clarification on the pump station. But other than that, all the information that I'd asked for, separate plans for showing the proposed grades, the profiles, catch basins, all of that stuff has been provided to us. The grading, I think, we're going to find out on this section is going to be a little bit easier than it was in phase 1, because I had requested Tom to actually go to a 1-foot contour scenario rather than 2 feet, such as what was on phase 1. It made it much easier for me to review the plan to see that the grading was going to work. And it'll be much easier for the contractor as well, because not only are the grades there, but the floor grades on the garages are there, which will help to maintain the positive pitch. So things have changed a little bit, but changed for the better. So I think it's going to work.
Questions?
No.
say you wrote something? They have different for each procedurally?
Well, that's as I said, this one document applies to both the special permit and the site plan approval. The subdivision would be separate.
Mm-hmm. And it's the subdivision plan that you need more information on?
Yeah, just those two minor things.
I hope we could get it approved this evening, conditional to,
I don't have a problem with the subdivision plan being approved tonight, subject to the receipt of the information on those two things. If it can be done, if you approve it tonight, you're going to get a certificate of approval that goes to the town clerk that starts the 20-day appeal period. So if it can be in and resolved within that 20-day appeal period before that ends, then there should be no issue on that.
we'll have it resolved tomorrow, Mr. Rowley. We have that information, so.
Does this reflect the previous approval and the
Yes, it does.
mediation agreement? This
Right, it refers
corresponds
to
with
the
that?
previous
It,
approvals.
Any actions for the board?
we had discussed, if I could break in here, we had discussed at our meeting with Tim and Chris and Ken and I about the fact that the original special permit, I think, required a modification to the sewer line in Onset Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall that that second one did. I looked for it in the first one, and I don't see it listed there, but it should be referenced here as a requirement.
I was looking for it in the plans, but I know it's been,
You won't see it in the plans because it's something that's got to be worked out between Bay Point and Guy Campina's office and David Menard, because it's all within the town highway, Onset Avenue. So whatever their requirements are going to be for trenching, resurfacing between the manholes or however it's got to go, I mean, that plan has got to be done to their satisfaction. So I would say that a reference to the fact that that needs to be done would be what you could put in the special permit, but leave it up to Bay Point to go before the sewer department and Dave Menard's office.
well,
that done.
I questioned it because they just resurfaced Onset Ave, and
I know.
apparently without any knowledge that there was going to be a sewer line going down.
I know, but it's got to be done, because I know that Guy Campina wants that force main off the beach.
Mhm. And that'll go, are they going all the way on Onset Ave or just past to the
No,
top of the hill?
what's going to happen is that the existing sewer line that's in the old Cahoon Street now, that goes out to Short Neck Road and so forth, my understanding, that stays, and it goes out to Onset Avenue, down Onset Avenue, as far as Independence Lane, that goes to the Independence Yacht Club. Once it gets to the Independence Lane, that's where it changes and goes to the next sewer manhole down the hill on Onset Avenue.
Correct.
Am I saying that right?
Approximately 130 feet from that sewer manhole on the top of Independence. That's the start of the gravity manhole. But that line goes down at Independence and the beaches. So we worked with Mr. Campina from
So
the
you're jumping down the manhole
start of this.
too.
We're going to bypass that and go to the next line, which goes to South Water Street Pump Station itself, yes.
So there is that aspect of it, and there is another section of the special permit that dealt with putting in cleanouts in that existing line. You remember during the discussion of Phase 1, we had an issue with not knowing exactly what the capacity of that 4-inch line was because it was not able to be inspected for its full length. There was only about 100 feet of it that got inspected. So I think we have to deal with that issue that's in the current special permit and how you deal with it at this point now that we're going to go into Phase 2. Phase 2 is going to have a new force main from the pump station out to a certain point beyond this project, and then it's going to go into the old line again.
Is the existing station going into this one, and, or is that?
The existing station is going to go into a relocated force main that will go down the new Starboard Drive and then turn and go into, no, go in Starboard Drive to a gravity manhole, which is the kind of a manhole that Tom and I are discussing in terms of its detail. And then it goes gravity from there into the new pump station. The new pump station will pick it up with a force main, which will go out the end of Cahoon to Onset Avenue, to Independence Lane, and then make the turn to go back down Onset Avenue on a new piece.
Short neck, going down
Short
short
Neck
neck.
Road.
I think you call it.
It'll go out
But
the
it's
existing
not- It's
line.
not the old 4-inch that
Yes,
exists now, it's a new line going?
no, no.
It's new up until, Mr. Chair, up until, well, short neck, up until this point here. So right currently, we have the existing pump station down here in the clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 4-inch force main that runs all the way through here to Short Neck, Onset Avenue, and then up Onset Avenue to Independence Lane geographically. The section from Independence to Short Neck at this point, so this section from here to here is remaining because it's under the road. It's an existing 4-inch. So it's going to be all new force main all through here with a new pump station. So we're going to cut it right at Short Neck. So, and then bypass it up at the top of Independence to extend that discharge point so it doesn't go down to the beaches.
So we need to make sure it's consistent with the original approval.
I'd have to review the language again to see if there's some way that it has to be modified to address the fact that they're going to make these changes. It'll leave a section, I would guess, what, 300 feet, maybe 400 feet long between the end of the cul-de-sac and Onset Avenue that will be old force main, that as of right now is in whatever condition it's in. And it was that section, along with the rest of it, that was going to require a clean-out if Phase 2 wasn't begun before a certain date. But now that we're dealing with that, I just want to be sure that the language is correct there, because the conditions in Phase 1 still stand until they're modified somehow.
Mm-hmm. So you prepared to close the hearing this evening? Gentlemen? With the exception of the existing engineering or the final engineering data that Charlie needs, and this would be the special permit and site plan. So you don't need any more. You didn't need any more engineering on that section of it, correct, Charlie? On the
On
special
which-
permit site plan?
No.
You got me here, there's two.
I would just point to item 21 in the conditions of the original special permit. It deals with that sewer force main. I just think we need to see how we're going to incorporate the language of that in here. It does say, prior to the endorsement of the definitive plan, Bay Point shall establish a performance guarantee to ensure this installation.
Which we
So-
did. We have bond money set aside for cleanouts if we ever do the new sewer line. So we put money,
It's more than just clean out, Chris, it's the construction.
that I thought that stipulation was, and we put money aside because if the cleanouts needed to be put in, if the new sewer line was never done. We put bond money set aside for that, for cleanouts, in case Phase 2 never was completed. Obviously, if Phase 2 gets completed, a new sewer line, then those cleanouts weren't going to be needed. So we had put money, when we did this, for those cleanouts every 200 to 300 feet, or whatever it calls for there. So if you look at the bond money,
I don't recall whether it, I don't recall seeing a performance bond for that.
it's in that,
It's in that list?
it's in that list. Yeah,
Okay.
it's in that list.
I can take a look at that.
When you reference record plans, do we need?
I'll look, because I got it here. Is it that one?
Sewer cleanouts, right there, 7,200.
June 10th.
To meet that condition if we never did it.
This would be for the special permit site plan.
I won't draw, I would never gonna draw on that. Unless we didn't go
Okay.
forward with Phase 2.
All right.
Well, if there's nothing further on the special permit and site plan approval, anyone, any other issues on that? We could close that part of the hearing and take a vote on that. If you think you need more information on the definitive.
No, I think if we can address the little bit of a grading problem on the cul-de-sac and then get the issues of the wet well squared away, and we can do it before the 20-day appeal period expires, then I don't have a problem with taking a vote on the definitive tonight.
So, care to make a motion?
Entertain a motion to close the public hearing
Yes.
For the definitive plan?
for the definitive plan only.
Well, you have a special permit, site plan approval and definitive subdivision, so do you,
modification to the site plan.
and the modification.
And there's no other questions on the language of the special permit decision?
No, we were all happy.
Second?
I want to see how that gets transcribed. The only caveat would be the additional information that Charlie needs, which he can address. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We have... Is that accurate, where we went to public hearing is,
Oh, it's scratched
so
out. Or
scrap,
deemed substantial. Correct.
should the findings have reference to the mediation agreement, the previous approval?
No.
You can repeat that in there.
Wasn't the mediation superseded by the special permit approval?
Yeah, I just called it the mediation agreement, but that's what I mean, the previous approval. As long as we're, yeah, it does reference the previous. Did you guys read over the conditions and findings? Did you see anything you wish to add? Would you care to make a motion?
How do you want it worded?
Approve the major modification to the special permit and site plan approval.
For-
So make a motion to approve the major modifications of the special permit and site plan approval for the Bay Point project.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now you want to approve the modification to the subdivision.
Well, that's the approval of the subdivision, it's not a
The approval of it,
modification.
yeah.
Yes, it's not a modification. Then you need the final design on the sewers for that approval, but you'll make it, you're okay with contingent?
I would make it a condition of approval that it
Yeah,
be...
condition. Is there a separate approval for that here, Ken?
It should, I would think you'd want to keep it as at least a separate item within the same document. You can approve it as a subdivision, but I think you need it as a separate document for town clerk. I'm pretty sure it was a separate approval
Yeah,
first time around.
I have a Form C. The final plans, 610.
610, yeah. Well, that's the final plans that we have, and at this point, it could be revised with the additional information.
Chris, have you prepared a covenant form yet? No covenant? You got to get that into them,
For signature.
because they have to sign that too before they can sign the plan. Okay.
George on the top.
So approval based on final design of sewer system and outstanding engineering issues reconciled? Sound good?
Marvelous. That sounds really good, George.
So, if we do care to make a motion regarding approval of the definitive plan?
Make a motion to accept, approve the
For phases 2 and 3, correct?
2 and 3,
definitive plan for Phase 2 and 3,
subject to the conditions.
subject to the conditions written below.
There's some of these I don't think that apply, so we can fix those, but basically our standard conditions with the addition of
Yeah.
final design on the sewer and outstanding engineering.
I'd just add to that, to be received and approved prior to the expiration of the 20-day appeal period.
Was there a second?
You're up. Second.
Any discussion?
Podlaski.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? See, that wasn't so painful after all, was it?
All good.
Now I know why you're still sitting here. We have, oh, it's both the same document. Request number 6 for partial release of surety for Bay Point. This is for, I assume, Phase 1.
Yes.
The amount they're requesting is $128,292. Charlie has inspected the work and has recommended the release.
Like a motion?
Please.
I move that we release $128,292 to Mr. Fay.
Small unmarked bills.
Give it to him and change.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do they need, what surety does the selectmen have to sign off? Just bonds?
Yeah, the bonds, they did it to sign off on. This is a cash surety, so
Mhm.
it's,
So
doesn't
we're
go
good.
before the selectmen.
You got things that you need signed?
Um, The only thing I'm interested in is getting the 53G accounts collapsed. Try to get some of those off the books.
You guys are all set.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
You're done.
Good evening.
You're used to sitting here long, huh?
Thank you very much.
If you do check with 911, they consider that a conflict.
I've handed out a list of 53G accounts and performance bonds that have it in highlighted sheets.
Just a suggestion, no, not yeah.
So which ones are we looking at, Ken?
Thank you very much.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
We're looking at the ones that are not highlighted or highlighted?
No, you're looking at all these ones.
I think the 53Gs, I think Charlie really has to review to see if there's any outstanding.
If he can
Right.
recognize them.
Well, I've marked off a bunch that, you know, are still either active or haven't quite been completed or have been completed that I'm aware of. There's a lot on this list that were way before my time, so I have no clue what it's about. What do you want to do? Go through them a little bit?
If, well, what I'd like to, I guess 2 steps. One is to get checked off which ones are still active and hold them for continuing inspections. And the other is to find out which ones are completed and we can remove from our list and send the money out.
I have no idea what East Wareham DMP number 9 is. The next one, Bay Point Club, I would keep that. Now, that's ongoing inspection. I assume that's for the inspection portion of the project. Giancola Properties, that's, I assume that's on Minot Avenue.
That could be anywhere in this property, so.
Well, I would hold on to it because they've started clearing the second lot, and at some point, they're going to need inspection, so I would hold on to that.
He may have to fill out another form to apply it to that project.
That may be. And I'll have to go back and see if there's anything else on, I think it was 72 Minot that those other projects came in under, so I don't know if there's anything here on that.
That's to the left, left of that building.
Yeah, before you get to
What's going in there?
Beaver Meadows, I think,
another similar, yeah.
Beaver Meadows, isn't that little subdivision off of Hathaway Street?
I think so, yeah.
I think so.
I believe that's complete. Eleanor Estates, I believe that project was rescinded. The only thing that was ever done was the approval of the definitive plan, and then the project was rescinded, so I guess you
Can you
owe...
charge us 86 cents to say that?
Yeah. 3166 Cranberry Highway, Richard Mann. I think that project is defunct.
I think so, too.
Pine Grove Estates, I would hold that because I think there's still a little bit of work that's ongoing there. Next, Sun, I'm trying to remember, is that the project off of Squirrel Island?
It was one of the solar projects.
Yeah, I would hold on to that for whatever it's worth. Master Millwork,
That's ongoing.
I don't know that they ever recalled for a final inspection.
There's an awful lot of cars in there for what they initially...
Well, they've been operating for a long time, but I don't think that anybody has ever asked for a final inspection. J. Donegan, that is for Wareham Realty, where the Wendy's will go, so that ought to stay in. Solbright Renewable Energy, that stays, I believe. Isn't that the one that's on Cranberry Highway, up on the hill by Great Hill Mobile Home Park?
On industrial land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so that should stay. I have no idea what Sandy Pine Solar Farm is.
Is that the one
That's
off in
460.
the Winters Sand Pit?
Yes.
So that should be
Yeah,
complete.
that can be released, that's done. Victor Breyer, that should stay. He's never asked for a final inspection on that. Cape and Islands Tire has never asked for a final inspection. Coastal Orthodontics, I don't know what that one is off the top of my
That's
head.
Kevin Olvera on 6 Recovery Road.
Oh, okay, yep, that should stay. Bayside Agricultural, they've never asked for a final. Zachnown 2707 Cranberry Highway is still under construction, and if that's all that's left in the account, they may need to add a little.
Is that
Baba,
actually gonna be built?
huh?
Is that actually gonna be built? or
Oh,
is
the
that
building's up. The building's
Oh,
up, the
that's
drainage
on
is
their
up.
prop- I'm thinking of the dental office.
Yeah. That next one, Baba 3070 Cranberry Highway, that can be released. I don't know what JAS Realty is. Rosebrook Way Monuments, that can be released. That's been done. J&J Holdings, that's on Cranberry Highway, West Wareham, that's under construction. Charlotte Furnace LLC, that's one of the solar farms, isn't it? So that should stay. CTG Properties Sonic, that's debunked.
That's gone.
That was Main Avenue, I believe.
I think that's gone, yeah.
That's debunked. Fort Fairfield, they've still got some final work to do there to clean that up. That hasn't been finished.
Is that the 40B?
No,
No,
that's the USDA office.
that's off Thatcher Lane.
Okay.
Patterson Brook, MMDDJSAK,
That's,
That's the Roby piece
Roby
down
piece.
the end that belongs to
That's-
McCarthy now?
Fiber Spa, not Fiber Spa.
I think they withdrew that, so I think that's a release as well.
yeah, I think they did too.
I thought there was another proposal coming.
So-
Blue Wave Solar, they've never asked for a final, so I guess you keep that one. Liquors and More, we've signed off on that. Building's been done. Spring Avenue, no work at all yet. Woodland Cove, nothing on that. I don't know what Agent Inc. is. Not familiar with Evergreen Farms, GT Bear, Wareham Family Dental. They haven't done anything other than to do a little bit on the building yet. I do not have any information on Globe Street Management. Wareham Mass 2 LLC, that's the Robertson property? Is that Realty? Wareham Realty?
Don't remember.
No, that was S&H Holdings, wasn't it?
Well, at one time, but now it's Wareham Realty, Wareham Realty Management. Waterways Parking, I've got nothing going on there.
I think that was a constructive approval, wasn't it?
Could have been.
No, that was a postponement of the decision.
Oh,
Ray Avenue, I don't know what that's going to end up being. He's been before the ZBA multiple times, continued the hearings about 6 times. I don't know what's happening with that, so I sold that there. LDE, I don't remember that.
That's Thatcher Lane, the old Navionics building.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
that should
what,
stay. Toby Hospital, I think we resolved that. There should be like $750 in that account, not 302. I think I squared that away with Jasmine the other day. They took money out of that account and paid me a similar bill that was for another job. So they got to switch their accounting around a little bit. Sunrays Development, that's Cranberry Highway. That's not in construction yet, but will be. Next page, Oakdale Heights. I'm not familiar. I wasn't in on that one. I was not in on Crane Landing. Was not in on,
these are surety, these are cash bonds here.
Yeah, these
I
are
don't know.
performance bonds. The one that you may be coming up is Beaver Path subdivision.
yeah. Yeah, that's the one you'll eventually release once the homeowners association is recorded. But that stuff that's before it, the preserved county farms, country farms, Cranes Landing, Oakdale Heights, I was not involved with any of those, so I don't know what the status of that is.
Bella Terra Circle, the town has taken the bond. but I don't think there's been any execution as to getting them finished.
Yeah, that's Belletary Circle's off West Street. I don't know what the status of that is.
2 or 3 lots in there?
SAV Associates, I'm not familiar with that one unless that's Cranberry Highway. I don't know. It's before my time. Cornerstone Estates off County Road, or is it Country Road?
Should be county.
Is that the one that got turned into the solar farm?
Without, they had 2 developments off a county road. I don't know what,
Fonseca Way and the first one.
Oh, okay. Again, I haven't been asked to do any inspections on that. I don't know anything about that. Carlton Place, I know where that is, but I have no information on it, was not involved in it. Charge Pond Subdivision 2, I have no idea what that is.
Why is that negative?
I don't know.
Give them more?
Because in previous administrations, they had paid out more money to the consulting than they had in the account.
so those are old ones that, although Maple Grove is not that old.
SAV Associates 586, I don't know about that. 816 Main Street, that's that 40B project, I assume?
Yeah,
Nothing to do with me?
that wasn't, was that 40B? The apartments up on,
Yeah, that was 40B.
Yeah. Charge Pond Subdivision 2, I think that's Marotta, M-A-R-O-T-T-A.
yeah, should be.
Not sure what that is. S&H Realty, that could be released. That's for their project that they did right at the corner that's now taken over by Wareham Realty Management.
Mhm.
So that could be released. Hathaway Estates,
That's now a solar field, right?
No. Wasn't Hathaway, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of another one. That, you could be right.
That's inside the Beaver, it was Beaver, the first part.
Well, it was part of the Wareham Plaza
It
property,
went all the way
right?
through, right.
Okay. Pond at Fairing Hill, no knowledge.
That's still there, but that's
Beaver
just-
Path,
This is another one of Bashant's project.
okay. There are several here, Woods at Great Neck. I don't know what the standard repair company is, have no idea.
That's the welding shop on the De Miranda property
Across from Perry's Ice Cream.
Okay. Well,
by Grossman's.
okay.
How you
But
dating this?
that Woods at Great Neck for 196.15. You got Woods at Great Neck, Paycor, 1893. Then further down, you got Woods at Great Neck 2, Cape Street, 276. Woods at Great Neck 3, 1817.
I think some of these owners of Woods of Great Neck may be defunct now.
Well, I don't know how you just associate, I don't know how you associate all of them together, whether they're the same project, different projects. I have no knowledge of what they are. I did an inspection of the roads down there for road takings at one point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever came back with final plans to get the town to take them over or not.
I think they did, but I'm not sure.
McCarthy Properties, don't know what that is. Wewianick Preserve, not familiar with that one.
That's Permisa Point. I think there's still some outstanding issues there.
Not familiar with it. Smithers Vincent, they never did call for inspections, and the property got built. So I guess you can release it. Retreat at Union Pond, not anything that I had anything to do with. Bartlett Pond Village, same thing. Tower Resources, no knowledge. Then you get Woods at Great Neck. Tyhonet Technology Park, no knowledge. Woods at Great Neck 3, no knowledge. Medical office building at Rosebrook, that never has been built. Well, yes, it has, the medical building, and then you've got the blank lot, and then you've got American Assisted Living. So I don't know whether that is for the existing office building.
That's for the existing office building.
Okay, well,
That's
it's been up and
probably-
running,
Well,
so
there was
that
supposed
probably,
to, there was another one, the mirror
Oh, the
image of
second
that
one.
was approved also,
Right
so,
behind the first medical building.
but nothing's ever been built.
yeah.
So, I don't know, I guess you release it if they're not doing anything there. Rosebrook definitive subdivision plan, everything up to and including the American Assisted Living has been constructed and built. I don't see why there would be anything left on that.
With the exception of the completion of Mosquito Dam Road, right? That was still,
You're not going to build that for $371.
Yeah, but they, I doubt that they're gonna do that.
I know
I
they
don't know
were-
why you'd keep $300, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay.
Village at 815 Main Street, again, that's the same thing as that Hancock one that's above, I think. Best Friends Preschool, I did a final inspection down there. They were supposed to line the parking lot. I don't recall that they ever did.
They never did the landscape,
Yeah, some of the landscape was
no sign.
not finished.
Yeah.
They had some issues with it. They wanted to get an occupancy permit before everything was completed, and I think they did. But I don't recall what the status of that
They were
was
supposed to
finally.
come back in the springtime with a landscaping plan, and never came. And of course, they,
So I guess we keep that.
Yeah.
Beaufort Wind Power, peer review. Walmart Stores East LLP. No work being done there.
Does that go back to the original Walmart?
Yeah. Beaufort Wind Power Tech Environment. No knowledge of that. Rosewood Place Mixed Use. That's done and released as far as I'm aware. I don't think there's anything more going in there.
Where's that?
Rosewood? Rosewood Place, is that what it is?
Did that change from mixed use to all apartment, right? That should be Rosebrook.
Yeah, I think it is Rosebrook. But there's no work to be done there, there's no inspections to be done there, it's complete. Rock Marsh, no knowledge. Maple Strings 2, no knowledge. Jonathan Estates, I guess Mr. DeBona still owes you some money.
Yep.
Maplewood Builders, I don't know about that. Canning Realty, that's a project that came before you and then he withdrew it.
Is it the one he withdrew, or is it the original?
Well, that's a good question. He never did
'Cause he
ask
didn't
for a
get the-
final
he never,
didn't
on
get
the
the
first
finish.
one,
he never
because he
finished.
never finished the landscaping.
Oh.
And then Bayshant Builders Beaver Path 2, whatever that is. I guess that's a part of your release.
That was helpful, thank you.
What's that?
That was helpful going through the list, thank you.
Okay.
Jonathan Estates might go back to the first owner, but I don't think that gentleman actually transferred. I think he just finished it, so he should.
Well, that went from Montero
Yes.
to Mario DeBona. And it was partially constructed when Mario took it over. So he had to finish the drainage. Water main, I believe, was in. He had to finish the road, do the sidewalk, do the landscaping, do the bounding. And that was, all that was done under my inspection.
I don't know who that money gets returned to.
Yeah, I don't know either. I thought that he was up to date himself on what the inspection fees were. So that may go back, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if there was a actual transfer or if he finished that for the bank or. So he may owe the 3,000 and maybe Montero owes it, I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be the bank.
as part of our tri-party agreement.
Hmm.
That's our share.
Are you willing to vote release based on the ones that
Did you write them all down?
I marked down? I'd have to follow through the rest from the minutes of the meeting.
Want a motion to release the monies that we said that we're not going to hold anymore?
Right, the ones that are done, it doesn't make sense to hold them anymore.
Yes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
New business, we have a meeting of the appointing authority tomorrow evening. So if there's any, I don't know if we actually, did we vote on the recommendation of Mr. Swanson or not? Do you recall? Did we have?
I don't think you did vote.
Yeah, after what you've heard, I'd say vote no too.
Hmm?
So he sat through a couple of our meetings and he's still coming back, so there's gotta be something.
So we need to send him for a psychiatric exam?
Yeah, there's something wrong.
It helps me sleep on Monday nights.
What's that?
It helps me sleep Monday nights.
We are the cure for insomnia.
Ken? What is this thing from the ZBA?
Those are recommendations. In your packets, you have a handout from it says from the ZBA. I had asked the zoning board of appeals if they had any issues with zoning based on their recent experience. And I was handed this by one of the members who recommended changes in some of the details on marijuana facilities, drive-throughs, and the setback distances between commercial and industrial that's within the landscape standards,
Okay, now,
landscape buffer standard.
on the back of the marijuana facilities, there's a lot of stuff that's scratched out. Is that what they want gone?
Right. That's what they want modified, and the underline being what they wanted to add.
Great Neck Road, remember before we said everything on the other side? Want
Is this
that gone?
something we study at home?
Say I'm not gonna act on this now.
I think what we should be doing is setting up a time when we could talk more about zoning for the upcoming town meetings, not only the fall, but the spring as well, too.
When does that, you know, have they given us a deadline yet?
No, but
Is it 45 days prior to town meeting?
one of the deadlines is 45, yes.
So we should have like a workshop or a few minutes at the end of a meeting so we can ban social clubs.
Is it possible to do it in another time rather than,
Say a workshop outside of Monday night. By the time the
If-
end of the meeting.
Yeah, if you feel it needs that,
Yeah.
that's fine. We just need to get it done before.
I'm okay meeting on a different night. It's just by the time this ends,
Yeah.
Pretty well
Well,
spent.
it's not 11 o'clock yet. That's, you know,
it's still
You're
past my
early
bedtime.
tonight.
we're ahead of the game.
Entertain a motion to adjourn?
second? I won't be here at the next meeting. I would have volunteered to participate, but I'm going to be sleeping. I'm going to be in Italy.
Where are you gonna be?
Italy,
Ah,
Perugia.
well, you could take us along. We could meet then.
Fine.
Had a meeting in
You gotta be here, you have to be here for your meeting.
We'll just advertise a public hearing and, where are you? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 10:05.